Hello, welcome to the Sound of Science, the place where we deconstruct unscientific bogus and silly scams. Let's go get them. Hello, you wonderful critical thinkers. Thank you so much for watching. Today I stumbled upon the latest video of one of the true high priests of the Christian apologist movement, William Lane Craig. God forbid if he were to exist. But how this man has ever been able to maneuver himself into the stardom of an entire demographic, it beats me. I have no clue why anyone would think that this man should be taken seriously. And in his latest video, he clearly demonstrates that his reasoning, in fact, is not serious. This man has no place in science. By the way, he never did any actual scientific research. That is a topic for another video, but let's see what Craig is up to now.
I changed my mind on the ontological argument. This is one of the arguments where I changed my opinion.
Ah, yes, the ontological argument. You finally dropped it, and so you should. It's total nonsense. It proves nothing, and it fails at the very first premise.
I believed for a long time that the ontological argument was not sound, and certainly not persuasive.
Wait. What? You now believe even more firmly in the ontological argument because of the Plantinga version? Why? It's been around for more than half a century, and it still is as ridiculous as it was in 1974. But please, Bill, can you explain to me one more time what you think is the only minor detail in Plantinga's ontological argument that stands in the way of you proving the existence of your supposed God? Please explain it to me one more time.
But then, as I became familiar with Alvin Plantinga's modal version of the ontological argument, it struck me that this is indeed a sound argument for God's existence. That is to say, it's logically valid. The only question concerning the soundness of this argument is the truth of the first premise. Is it true that maximal greatness is possibly exemplified? And it certainly seems to me that it is. It seems to me that it's possible.
The only problem with the ontological argument, in this case the silly Plantinga version, is that you can't prove the first premise to be true. Oh boy. Again, dear friends, this is the very best they have. This is one of the holy trinity of Christian apologists. This is the guy who all the butchered apologists out there listen to, and they present degraded versions of Craig's already totally foolish arguments. But you heard it yourself. The only problem with this version of the ontological argument is that the first premise cannot be proven to be true. But Craig says he thinks it is possible that it's true. Let's listen to this again.
And it certainly seems to me that it is. It seems to me that it's possible. And therefore I'm committed to the truth of the first premise.
Oh boy. Yet again, William Lane Craig demonstrates that there is no place in science for him. And there is no place in science for any Christian apologist who is prepared to make a fool of himself by promoting an argument of which even the first premise cannot be proven to be true. If it's no longer required to prove your first premise to be true, then anything goes. For example, my farting unicorn argument proves that farting unicorns are dancing in William Lane Craig's brain. It consists of just a few premises that all logically follow. The only vulnerable part of my farting unicorns argument is that we cannot prove its first premise to be true, which doesn't seem to be a problem according to William Lane Craig. We cannot prove the first premise of my farting unicorns argument. But I certainly can't see any reason why my first premise can't be or wouldn't be possible. So here's my first premise, and that is, it is possible that farting unicorns exist in William Lane Craig's brain, who will actually exist as soon as it is possible for them to exist. So that's fantastic, because now we no longer have to prove that these farting unicorns exist. We now only have to prove that it is possible for them to exist. And I can't find any reason why it's not possible for such farting unicorns to exist in the brain of William Lane Craig. So I'm committed to the truth of that first premise. So that proves that such farting unicorns actually exist in William Lane Craig's brain. This sounds like a stupid joke, but it actually seriously is the core of Plantinga's ontological argument for God. Plantinga first imagines a type of God who has a very specific superpower, being that this God necessarily exists as soon as it's possible for this God to exist. And in the next step, Plantinga turns this imaginary superpower of this imaginary God into a claim. His first premise then is, it is possible for this kind of God with this imaginary superpower to exist. And then his conclusion is, therefore such a God must exist necessarily, because he himself just gave this imaginary God that imaginary superpower. What a load of nonsense. And as I demonstrated, we can use the same argument to prove that farting unicorns are dancing in the brain of William Lane Craig. But at this point, I would even believe that without the argument. The stupidity of this argument is beyond belief, and it's embarrassing that the one who conceived it calls himself a philosopher. It's even more embarrassing that half a century later, people like William Lane Craig still try to fool people with this nonsense. Well, anyway, Christian apologists. Thanks for watching.